Welcome back to Coast View. We're going to shift gears now. One of the things that I want to talk more about on Coast View is the very serious drug problem that is happening in America today. We read, I think, a lot about the opioid crisis, the fentanyl crisis, other aspects. We talk about policy as it relates to drug use. We worry about people who are in jail that are there because of their involvement in drugs in some way or another. It's something we really need to talk more about. In Mississippi, there's a crisis, and I'm really pleased to have as my next guest, Angela Mallette. Is it Mallette, Angela? Is that am I saying your last name correctly?
It's Mallette.
Mallette. Okay, thank you.
Angela Mallette.
I meant to ask before we started the show, but she's director of outreach for an organization called End It for Good. And she has an interesting story. As I mentioned, we talk a lot about resiliency on this show, and she's had moments in her life that have been very challenging, and she's bounced back. She's very resilient, and now she's giving so much back to bringing awareness to the challenges that we face in society today around this problem. So, Sarah, good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
I said Sarah, and I just got
done with Sarah.
But Angela, tell me about. We're gonna just give me a quick review on End It for Good, and then we're going to take a step back a little bit and talk a little bit more about your story. But what is End It for Good?
So End It for Good is a Mississippi-based nonprofit, and our mission is to educate the communities around Mississippi on the harms from our drug war policies. We want to see a Mississippi where there are more families thriving, less crime in our communities, and less harm from criminal responses to drugs. So End It for Good was born in 2019, and now we're a team of 5, and we're located on the coast in Hattiesburg and in Jackson.
Where you've become a leader. You're now a member of the governor's opioid task force, and you have other roles that you're playing. And there's a lot to learn about the situation that we face today and what we need to do about it. So we're going to come back to that in just a second. You went to Ole Miss. You got an engineering degree, and I was really, really pleased to read that you were involved in a recovery effort. I was publisher of the Sun Herald at the time and a vice chairman of the recovery effort for Governor Barber, worked really closely with him. In fact, I wrote the foreword to his book, America's Great Storm.
Nice.
Hurricane Katrina. But and then you spent some time in Jackson. You're back now on the coast. But tell me a little bit about your story and what happened during the part of your story that created the need to become more resilient.
Yeah, so the short story of my version, I grew up here on the Gulf Coast. I was born and raised in Jackson County, and my family is here. I graduated from Van Cleve High School, and then off to Ole Miss I went and got a degree in civil engineering, and then I moved back to the coast. So I graduated college in 2004 and went to work for a private engineering firm down here, and then the next year, we had a little storm blow in, and it just, devastated life as we all knew it. But on the other side of that, it was engineers that had got to play a role in rebuilding everything along the Gulf Coast. And so I was really fortunate and blessed to be able to work on lots of fun projects and had learned lots of things after Hurricane Katrina. So I got to work on Beach Boulevard in Pascagoula, Beach Boulevard in Ocean Springs, did some cleanup work all along Highway 90 in Biloxi. And to the company that I worked for, we had the bridge contract for Jackson and Harrison County. So we had to go around and inspect every single bridge, like entire big bridges, but then also really small ones. So we did inspections to make sure that they were still structurally sound. And so, hurricane efforts took a good 5 years really to just start seeing things finalized and grass is growing. So that kept me busy for a while. And so I was 29 years old and I got pregnant for the first time. And unfortunately, that pregnancy ended with a stillbirth. And I had to go to the hospital and, of course, have a procedure to remove the fetus. And afterwards, I was prescribed pain medication. Now, I had been prescribed pain medication before. It's not like it was the first time. But at that juncture in my life, I did not have the coping skills to process grief. I didn't understand anything about mental health. And quite frankly, Ricky, addiction just wasn't on my radar. I was arrogant in the fact that I thought addiction didn't happen to college educated, professionals out in the world. But I had a rude awakening because addiction came up to a 30-year-old woman. I turned 30 during all of this, and it derailed my life. And I just took a nosedive into addiction, and which included going into the criminal justice system and the repercussions that come from that, going to treatment twice, and then being court ordered to go to treatment. But I found recovery. I have now been in recovery for almost 7 years. And the happy ending to that story is that in 2015, God finally gave me that little baby girl that I had always prayed for. My daughter Stella was born, and she is happy, thriving, and has been the most beautiful gift of my recovery. It is Stella for sure.
I had the DA of Jackson, Greene, and George County on, Angela Myers-McElrath, in the last few days. And one of the things that she always talked about is that there are some people who are not good for society and they need to go to jail. There are other people that if we handle this correctly, there can be redemption in their story. And so she works really hard to say, okay, where is someone who's done something criminal, whatever? Where is it someone that is bad for society, a bad person, and they need to be away so they can't cause harm to other people? And where is it that it's someone who is really down on their luck, has experienced some difficult times, but there's redemption in there? And how do you sort through that? Yours is a story of redemption, and people had to hang in there with you, because I heard you mention you've gone through treatment a couple of times, but I've heard people go through treatment 20, 30 times and still find themselves and still find redemption and still are clean today. It's so important not to give up on people, isn't it?
It is incredibly important. For me, I thought that the reason that my addiction started and happened, and I thought that all of that was because of what happened when I was 29 and 30, right? The loss of that pregnancy. And so I kept just trying to point at that. But while I was in treatment, the therapist explained to me, especially the last time that I was there, they explained to me, they said, addiction happens by things that happen in your childhood, by childhood experiences, childhood traumas. And you've got to go back to your entire emotional development stage and figure out what those things were. So when I finally understood that my maladaptive coping skill choices, I chose, when life got really hard for me, I chose to numb. Well, I had to go back and do some deep work and look at, where did I learn that in my childhood? Where did I learn to escape and numb instead of feeling and expressing and being honest about what I was going through? And when I learned that, it was just a game changer for me. And then I was able to learn new healthy coping skills, right? And so it's a common myth that once you get into recovery, life is just all like sunshine and rainbows. Like life is normal. We have good days and we have hard days, and we have disappointments, and we have frustrating days with our kids. But now I have healthier coping skills. I don't need to escape when I have a bad day, right? I need to take a nap or go to a yoga class. So.
Well, we're having a conversation with Angela Mallette, who's the director of outreach for End It for Good. She has a very compelling story of resiliency and redemption, and now she's really sort of dedicated her life to helping others find their way through. Mm-hmm. And because we are in the midst of a pandemic, it's got a pandemic. Well, it actually is in a way if you think about the drug situation. But the reality is that there's a major problem in America today, and Mississippi is not immune to that. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about our organization and just how bad the problem is. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. You've heard me talk about my friendship with the Roberts family. Lisa Marion Roberts, Robin Roberts' mother, was a very, very dear friend. And, Robin often says, make your mess your message. And our guest in this section of the show today, Angela Mallette, Director of Outreach for End It for Good, really has done that. She's made her mess her message, and she's very determined. And you had a turning point in your life, and you really decided not only to change your life, but to help others change theirs as well. It's been your message.
Yeah. And it was literally a turning point, a U-turn to be exact. So I was in early recovery, and my daughter turned 2 years old, and I thought, okay, well, it's time for her to go to daycare so she can be around some other kids, and I'm going to go back to work. And so I was on my way to a job interview, and on the way there, I caught myself thinking of lies or excuses. I was like, okay, so at this interview, if they ask why I haven't worked for the past couple of years, what am I going to say? And at the time I was on drug court. And so drug court requires random testing and appearances. And I said, how am I going to explain that to them? And I just said, you know what? I'm not doing this. And I literally did a U-turn in the middle of Old Canton Road in Jackson, Mississippi, and said, I am not going back to a workplace or anywhere where I have to lie about the things I've been through. And that was, I did a U-turn in the road, and I went home, and because I had to really process this. And so I did not go to that interview. And then it was like, when I made that decision, doors just started opening. Within a few months, I was hired as the outreach coordinator for the state's opioid campaign, which allowed me to work for the governor's opioid and heroin task force. So now this was 2017, so it was Governor Bryant. And I met, some incredible people who served on that task force. And we hosted over 40 town halls across the state talking about the opioid epidemic, helping people get into treatment. And so that's really kind of where it began, that U-turn in the road and that decision where I'm not going to lie or hide about my past. I'm going to share it so that other people can know they can do it too. And so that eventually led to my being involved with End It for Good. And so a few things happened on this journey of learning about treatment in our state, drug policies, and how drug policy affects everything, right? So if you zoom all the way out, right, zoom out with me now. If you zoom all the way out and you look at all these systems in our state that are broken, right? So we can look at our prison system, which I know that they're working hard. The new commissioner is making changes over there. But our prison system in the state of Mississippi needs massive amounts of change. Our treatment systems, Department of Mental Health doesn't, and incredible job with the little tiny bit of resources they have. And I mean, you can call treatment centers right now, and there are 3, 4, 5 week waiting periods just to get somebody in a bed. And people with fentanyl today, people die in 3, 4, 5 weeks. And, we can look at our child welfare system. We can look at human trafficking. There's so many areas that are affected by drug policies. So what that says to me, with this engineering mind, is if you think of like an engineering system or the scientific method, you have to isolate where the flaws are in the system before you can revise any of it. Right. So a zoomed out approach really looks at, okay, so the one thing that dictates what happens in all these systems is our drug policies. And so I spent several years researching why that is, looking at the history of our drug laws, looking at the history of our responses to drugs in our society. And I think that we need to rethink some things. And so that's the message that we share at End It for Good. We ask people to zoom out with us. Let's look at how we got here, and let's look if there might be a better path forward.
Angela, what's so interesting about your story, as we begin to kind of wind down this segment, we will definitely pick the conversation up on future shows, is that not just because of your experience, but because of your training. Engineers are about solving problems. They're about really defining what the battle plan is going to be, and I mean to the infinite detail. By combining your experience with your engineering background, you're all about solving problems and find solutions. You actually feel like you can make a difference, don't you? And we have less than a minute left.
Yes. I do believe that we can make a difference. I don't know that I can make it by myself, but we collectively in the state of Mississippi can make a big difference. And I would love to continue the conversation with you, Ricky. It's been fun. So let's do it again.
It has been. Do a search on End It for Good. This has been Angela Mallette, who is the director of outreach there. We will definitely continue the conversation, because any conversations we can have that will help parents and anyone who may be struggling with addiction or know someone who is, we need to solve some problems in America, and we got some work to do. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.